In a forest, a soldier was trying to communicate with his base. After much trying, he finally succeeded. The base asked for an explanation of what had happened so far, and the soldier said that everyone was dead or missing and that he was currently the only survivor. The soldier received no response from the base. Instead, a very large explosion occurred nearby, which caught his attention as it seemed to have affected the base. The soldier became worried and tried to do something but couldn't in time, as he also lost his life to a mysterious person. Inside the base, people were fleeing. But there was another man, this time a guy with a mohawk, who was blowing everything up as he went. And the other soldiers met the same fate as their friends, this time by a crazy long-haired man. The long-haired man was upset he couldn't play around much. Meanwhile, someone called his attention through the communicator and warned that the target was not in that location. And there was also a nerd, who was very good at what he did, watching the drone and cameras just to find what he wanted. And then the nerd called the attention of a guy named Takeo, who was a sniper, and told him where the target was. Without losing any chance, Takeo immediately got into the helicopter, killed everyone, and had the target in his sight. Then their captain, named Quenks, appeared and said their next mission was in Japan. On a day not too distant from all this, 2 boys were going to school and one had a broken arm, if you catch my drift. And they noticed that all the girls were talking about a new transfer student who was very handsome. The handsome guy saw the 2 boys and decided to ask about the arm. And he said he broke his arm in a car accident. And there were 2 guys above who were saying that his memories had actually been erased. Frankenstein remembered when he recruited M21. He saw him and immediately realized that he was not a normal guy. And M21 explained that they were part of the Union. And he was the transfer student all the girls liked. Our protagonist's name was Raizel and he charmed everyone with his beauty. Then he went, drew on the redhead's cast, sat down, and watched the class. The next day of school, people arrived from school calling the new employee Uncle, and he was very excited about it. Raizel had a very cool cell phone, and a little guy named Manabu was euphoric teaching him how to use the phone. Frankenstein was watching news about the Union. It seemed there had been information theft, and he received a very cute message from the protagonist and got all goofy. Meanwhile, the new employee remembered what the Union was like. And then the sir called his attention, welcoming him. But then some very angry people arrived looking for a redhead who had hit on a married woman. They almost hit the sir who was just sweeping the place, but then the redhead arrived, talking tough to them. The redhead explained that he had only helped the woman. She had fallen to the ground and he helped her up. And with that, the woman fell in love. And then the fight began. The fight was balanced. One moment the big guy hit, the next the redhead got beat. And then the protagonist appeared and didn't say a word to help his friend. Meanwhile, the redhead landed a punch on the big guy's face. And because of that, the guy got very angry and started beating him up. Poor sir tried to help, but almost got hit. In the middle of all this, the new employee arrived and immediately laid down the law, making the big guy pray and even throwing him hard onto a car. The new employee was very cool, and the big guy asked everyone to leave and said they wouldn't cause any more trouble at that school. Meanwhile, the protagonist went back to eating. That night, the new employee remembered his past and how difficult it had been for him as he had been used in every way. Because of that, he had no name. He remembered his friend saying that they needed to find a name in respect to those who were gone. And then Frankenstein arrived, saying he had done a good job and warned that everything was set for him to live there. And that night the mercenaries appeared, saying they had an investigation mission in Japan. This was because 2 experiments had escaped, and the good part was about to begin. That night 2 police officers were cursed, while 2 people entered a crime scene to investigate what had happened. It seemed that the mission of these 2 was to put an end to people seeking superhuman power. They went to school the next day to talk to the principal, and there they explained that they wanted to enter the school and they succeeded. The 2 were transferred to the protagonist's class where everyone was charmed by their appearance. The boy's name was Regis and the girl's name was Seira. The 2 were surprised because the protagonist's aura was very strong. The 2 newcomers were interesting, but Regis didn't know how to eat with chopsticks, and it seemed that Manabu had fallen in love. That afternoon, M21, who was the new employee, was talking to Frankenstein. They talked about the new children and how they were not normal. M21 said that they were nobles, and this ended up scaring Frankenstein. And M21 explained that the Union was after them. Frankenstein explained that these people lived in fear and were found by humans, and thus they were used for human security. In the middle of this, we see that the protagonist had already helped these students in the past, sort of erasing their memory. Frankenstein explained that these people were called nobles, and that they recognized humans as beings to protect. They arrived home and everyone was having a party, which ended up irritating Frankenstein, but he didn't make it explicit. Meanwhile, Yusuk, who was the redhead, asked if Regis and Seira could live with the protagonist since they had nowhere to live. And Raizel just said whatever, which left the situation in Frankenstein's hands. After showing them their room, Seira arrived and realized that M21 was not normal. And the next day at school, she talked to her companion to check M21 more closely. And at the end of that day, Regis went out to confront M21. Meanwhile, the students were having some problems as the bullies came to confront Yusuk again. And they asked him to go with them, otherwise they would finish off Raizel. In the middle of this, Regis talked to M21 and asked if he knew what had happened last month. And he clearly knew. Regis knew that the media's version was false, and so he asked M21 to tell him everything. Seeing that he wouldn't cooperate with him, he started fighting M21, but Regis easily knocked him down. Yusuk beat up the group of bullies. And when Raizel tried to help, Yusuk asked him not to do anything because he could get hurt, so he continued alone, beating up the people. In the middle of this, the bully's boss got very angry, and then he pointed a gun at Yusuk. M21 arrived just in time and finished off the boss, asking everyone to stop. And so everyone fled that place. That night everyone left, and Regis talked to M21 about humans and said that they could also fight if necessary. The next morning everyone arrived at school, and it seemed that M21 had already got used to life there. And in the classroom Manabu was scolding Yusuk for almost dying the day before. And then Regis and Seira arrived. Manabu got all excited to see Regis and started talking, saying he felt a connection between the two. Yusuk noticed this and asked if Manabu liked men. At that, Regis tried to talk to M21 about finishing him off if he tried anything out of the ordinary. And Frankenstein was talking to Raizel and got a scolding because the tea was bitter. Manabu was adjusting his security network, and someone ended up invading it. And then a hacker war began against Tan, who was the Union's hacker. Yusuk ended up stepping on Manabu's PC cable and delayed everything. And Tan sent a message that everything was answered by Yusuk since Manabu had gone to talk to his uncle. Yusuk ended up misunderstanding everything and thought the guy was someone Manabu was talking to go out with. When Manabu saw this, he scolded Yusuk. And because of all this, the Union people ended up finding M21. And they left to capture him. Regis was fighting M21 as always, and the man said he was following a promise. And Frankenstein arrived saying that everyone should clean the house because of the mess they made. And even Raizel came to help. The next day Frankenstein talked to M21 and warned him that he would be receiving his payment in a ghost account so as not to be found by the Union. But it turns out that night, he ended up being found by them. They said they were a Union task force. M21 recognized them. He recognized Hammer and Shark, and he realized he wouldn't be able to deal with the two of them alone. But they started to insult his partner named M24 who had already been killed. With that he got enraged and went after them. But all their attacks were avoided and he was attacked by Shark who stepped on him. And then Regis and Seira appeared and started helping M21. Shark advanced towards Regis. And M21 threw himself in front to protect the two. The Union task force captain appeared and sought M21. And he ended up surrendering so that they wouldn't attack the two. And Regis ended up getting irritated, thinking he was being tricked by M21. The next night Manabu was invaded by the same hacker. And because of that he sent him a virus as a gift. With that, the hacker felt obliged to visit Manabu after learning all his data. Meanwhile, Frankenstein went to talk to Regis because of what happened to M21. And Regis left there because he was very angry. Meanwhile, Seira told everything that had happened. The next morning, the people who kidnapped M21 decided to ask some questions. And after getting beaten a lot, M21 kept saying nothing. Captain decided to give M21 some time to tell things. And after drinking some water, he decided to cooperate. M21 said he would only continue on the condition of telling everything that had happened to the other experiments. And so they accepted. And to finish, M21 still asked for ramen to eat. The next day the school staff noticed that M21 was missing, and decided to try to find out what had happened. However, Regis did not cooperate with all this. Manabu said they would go to the principal's house after school to play some game. But he received a message directly from Tan asking to meet him personally. Later, Seira and Yusuk took the groceries to the principal's house. And there in the middle they found someone who was being robbed. And Yusuk decided it was time to play hero. At Manabu's meeting it seemed that he got along very well with Tan. They discovered that they had a lot in common. And Manabu decided that he wanted to talk to Tan's boss because he greatly respected Tan's hacking skill. The guy Yusuk met was Takeo, the Union's sniper. He said he had a sister and that he was worried about her. And then Yusuk received a message from Manabu saying that he would be going to the principal's house. And because of that, Yusuk left, saying goodbye to Takeo. That afternoon, Tan was sad because he felt an affection for Manabu. Takeo appeared, and because of that, Tan tried to bring up the subject of finding Takeo's missing brother. And Takeo said he only had his sister and now nothing else mattered. Meanwhile, M21 was saying nothing. Shark lost patience and started beating him. Then Takeo appeared and told him to stop everything. Because of that, Shark got irritated and said that Takeo's sister was possibly dead a long time ago, which made the sniper nervous. He said that his sister, who was being held hostage by the Union, was possibly already dead. This made him very angry, but Tan prevented their fight. The next day at the end of class, Regis noticed he was being followed. With that, he went directly and met with Shark. Regis ended up irritating Shark, which made him jump on the boy, but Regis was infinitely stronger. And Shark realized that Regis was actually a noble. While the two were fighting, Hammer gave the medicine to Shark, which made him stronger and buffed. In this situation, the fight became more tense and Regis's power no longer worked. Then Regis teleported behind Shark and gave him a strong attack. But before he died, Hammer brought Yusuk and Manabu as hostages. Because of that, Regis ended up giving up and following all their orders, and Shark took all three at once to his group. Regis woke up after being kidnapped and was furious with M21, because nothing good had happened since they met. Meanwhile, Seira told Raizel about their power to be connected. And with that power, she could sense that something horrible was happening. Frankenstein understood that Yusuk and Manabu ended up being involved in this because they were going home together. In the middle of this, Shark concluded that Regis had something to do with the coffin, and asked M21 for explanations. And the other two who were taken hostage woke up and were sad to see that Takeo and the hacker were there in the enemy group. After a while, they found M21 who was to blame for all this. While all this was happening, Seira was heading towards her brother. Raizel and Frankenstein were right behind. Hammer went out to get food and Yusuke got beaten more and more by Shark. M21 said they had no connection, and Shark continued and almost killed everyone, but the hacker told him to stop because that's not how it works, and the captain said it should be done the way Shark said. And then Shark got even more irritated and started beating Regis. Then Hammer got the food he wanted and met Seira. She felt that Regis was being beaten and that's exactly what was happening. Hammer tried to blow up Seira but couldn't, and decided to flee in the middle of another explosion. Then Shark took a punch from Yusuke, and Quenks, who is the captain, told Shark to execute them, and M21 finally made his decision. He stepped in saying that there was no need to kill the boys, but the captain refused. He said he felt guilty for everything that happened, and on the roof the fight was even more complicated. Frankenstein and our protagonist met Takeo, and Frankenstein volunteered to fight, and Raizel moved on. Meanwhile, M21 and Shark were in a mortal battle, but M21 couldn't handle him and ended up falling to the ground. At that, Regis managed to free himself and was moved by M21. Meanwhile, on the roof, Takeo took a pill that greatly increased his ability, and downstairs Shark also transformed, but Regis easily finished him off. Then Captain Quinks also took a pill and became badass. Shark was thinking that now the tables had turned, but he was pierced by his captain. With that, the captain absorbed his powers. Regis tried to fight the captain, but it was still difficult. He was no match for him at all, and the captain got irritated and ended up landing a punch that knocked Regis out, but the game was over. Now Raizel arrived. At that very moment, Takeo threatened Raizel, and then my son Frankenstein got really nervous, and then he activated his true power. Downstairs, Raizel came online and said nothing, but his power was so strong that it knocked all the enemies to the ground, kneeling before him. In the warehouse, Seira decided to end all this. She created a scythe with her power and delivered a mortal blow, thus killing Hammer. And on the roof, Frankenstein used all his power to severely injure Takeo. The sniper couldn't die. He felt he could see his sister again, so he managed to escape Frankenstein's power. In the basement, the captain tried to attack our protagonist, but it was too late. Raizel was strong but ended up sending him flying. In the end, the captain asked the hacker to take the medicine to be absorbed, but Manabu asked Raizel to do something and not let the hacker die. Meanwhile, on the roof, Frankenstein also decided that he wanted to end everything. He said he had broken a promise to Raizel by saying he wouldn't use his power. At that, Seira arrived, and Takeo's last words were a request to save Yusuke from everything that had happened. Hearing this, Frankenstein decided to let him live, asking him to apologize to Yusuke. In the basement, the hacker refused, and so the captain decided to try to kill him anyway. But Raizel didn't let him and ended up paralyzing the captain. Our protagonist said he would fulfill Manabu's request, and with that, blood enveloped the whole place and began to float around Raizel. Regis realized that this was an absolute power and wondered who Raizel was. And to end the fight once and for all, Raizel decided to deliver the final blow to the captain using his blood power. The next day, M21 and Takeo woke up in Raizel's mansion with many bandages. Raizel was talking to Frankenstein, who ended up coughing blood. This was due to how much power he had used the night before. That night, the hacker Tan went to eat with everyone. M21 sat down to eat and Regis fought with him, as always happened. After that, Raizel decided to talk to M21, saying that he was not weak and that he felt immense power. So he took some of M21's blood and put it on his lips, asking M21 to awaken definitively. Then he transformed into a monster but managed to return to normal. That was his true form. After this demonstration of power, Raizel left. Meanwhile, Tan and Takeo were talking about fleeing because all that was a farce for them. Tan explained to Takeo that he didn't have a sister and that, in fact, he never found anything about it, and only records existed and they were all false. In fact, Takeo's memories were being manipulated, and because of that, he had a crisis asking why he had done all this. Tan explained that it was time to follow a new life, and the next day they decided to leave. Before that happened, Tan explained to M21 that he never found anything about his friend. And before leaving, M21 asked Frankenstein if the two could live there because they were innocent. And Raizel was listening to everything and ended up accepting without worries. Because of everything that happened, Yusuke and Manabu stayed inside the principal's house. And only after a while could they return to school. And when they returned, they discovered that Takeo and Tan would now be working at the school, apparently as security guards. Walking around the school, they noticed that Tan, Takeo, and M21 were famous among the girls. And this made Yusuke a little down. Because of that, Manabu decided to ask M21, Takeo, and Tan for help to help Yusuke with Seira because he apparently liked her. And Raizel went along to ask for this help too. Then they went to Frankenstein's office asking if he understood love and if he could help Yusuke. Frankenstein explained about his flirtatious past, but it turned out that no one cared at that moment. Then they decided to ask Regis, but he couldn't help because he didn't know much about Seira herself. But Regis ended up agreeing to help because of Raizel. Then they decided to write a love letter, but Yusuke didn't know how to write, and so they went back to square one. So to help Yusuke, they decided to go to physical education class to help the boy in a basketball game. But the one who ended up taking the spotlight was Regis himself. Regis and M21 kept competing and making baskets, until Raizel managed to get the ball and give it to Yusuke. But Takeo defended the ball and scored the last points, gaining all the attention. At the end of the day, Yusuke ended up giving up. But then Seira arrived and ended up delivering the letter that Yusuke had thrown away, and no one knows who gave it to her. Seira asked Yusuke to show who he truly was, because only then could they get to know each other better. And she gave him a small smile. At home, they discovered something horrible. The people said that they had decided to erase Yusuke and Manabu's memories because of everything that happened, and with that they wouldn't remember the problems that were caused by the union. Yusuke was irritated by this because he ended up feeling betrayed by everything that happened. The two didn't want to lose their memories, but Raizel ended up saying that this was necessary. In the end, their memories were exchanged with Raizel's power, and the next day everything would be back to normal. The next day someone appeared in front of the school. At that, all those who had powers ended up noticing that mysterious man. M21, Takeo and Tan ended up trying to stop the man, but Regis and Seira appeared and said that the man was their great chief. Frankenstein appeared and thus he met the man named Jejichu. In a distant place, there were people talking about Regis and Seira. It seemed that they found someone who was in the coffin and that they should die for being traitors. In the corridors, two leaders named Karyas and Rajak revealed that Raizel was a traitor to their race. In Frankenstein's house, Jejichu was there to talk to Raizel, and he informed that much had changed after Raizel was put to sleep in the coffin. After the death of the previous lord, his daughter Rastria took his position, and she was looking for Raizel because he was responsible for her father's death. Then the man asked Raizel if there was any chance of him returning to the kingdom, but Raizel said no. Meanwhile, Regis was talking to Tan about the man being from his family. He said that Jejichu was Regis's grandfather and they had the same surname, which was Landegree, and Regis couldn't say who the man was because he was more mysterious than Raizel himself. And then Frankenstein was talking to the man. And the man said that he didn't trust him because, in fact, he was a madman who killed many nobles. In the past, Frankenstein was known as the noble hunter, captured them and performed experiments on them. Formerly, the Lord tried in every way to make Raizel move to the noble kingdom, but he did not accept. And after he left, Jejichu appeared to talk to the Lord, giving several news about the noble hunter. And he said that this guy, in fact, was a human and that he gained these powers because of an unknown experiment. And the Lord ordered them to catch the hunter because he wanted to talk to him. Then they decided to hunt Frankenstein, but they couldn't. All were killed. After that, Jejichu arrived at the scene to talk to him. He introduced himself and said that the Lord wanted a word with him, but Frankenstein said he wouldn't go, and one of the leaders ended up advancing to attack him. The leader realized that it was difficult to finish off Frankenstein, so he pulled out a soul weapon, and if a leader wielded one of these, it was with the certainty of the fight ending. But Frankenstein was not afraid. He asked for the spears of shadows to appear, and a weapon appeared in his hands, and the fight grew to extraordinary levels. During the fight, Frankenstein explained that he hunted nobles because they themselves hunted humans, something that went against the laws of the noble. By wielding this weapon, Frankenstein became out of control, and the weapon began to consume his soul. Because of that, Jejichu also summoned his weapon. But a very large explosion occurred due to Frankenstein's out-of-control power, and he used this to escape. When he arrived home, Raizel was there. After that, the leaders appeared at Raizel's house to hunt Frankenstein, but Raizel didn't let them and said that Frankenstein was now his property. 5 years passed after these events, and the leaders helped Frankenstein control his weapon. But it was impossible, and Raizel apologized to Jejichu for the things that had happened. But he said that he would take care of Frankenstein. That night, Frankenstein gave Raizel some tea and asked why he lived alone in the house. And Raizel said that he was fine and the tea he made was very good. The next day, Frankenstein was summoned to talk to the Lord and he went there. The Lord said that he envied Frankenstein because he was in love with Raizel. Frankenstein asked the Lord to abolish this system, but it was impossible, and because of that, the Lord explained that he was interested in Frankenstein. After that, Frankenstein left and the other nobles were irritated. They said that they were against Frankenstein staying in that world and that he should leave. Day after day, Frankenstein appeared to talk to the Lord. And on one of those days, Jejichu was there and warned Frankenstein not to cause any more problems. Some nobles appeared and asked to fight Frankenstein, and sure enough, the fight began. But the noble named Yakai began winning. This was because Frankenstein was containing his power so as not to lose control. But the one who lost control was the noble, and he almost killed Frankenstein. And then the noble began to speak ill of Raizel. Frankenstein got irritated and ended up losing control of his power, and he ended up tearing out Yakai's eye. And then Raizel and the Lord appeared to hold Frankenstein, but the guy was out of control, and because of that, Raizel decided to free himself. After all this, Raizel put Frankenstein's blood on his own lips, which made him return to normal. After all this, Frankenstein woke up in Raizel's house and got up to apologize. And Raizel explained that Frankenstein should appear at the castle and that his master would go along. At that moment, Raizel coughed blood and Frankenstein made his tea. In that tea there was Frankenstein's blood, and this made the pact between the two. And then we return to the present time where Jejichu says he is against what happened. Frankenstein explains that Raizel does not want to return to that place, and the man ends up accepting all that. At the end of that night, Jejichu asks Regis to stay in that world to learn from Raizel, and the same thing is said to Seira. When the man returns to the noble world, he explains that it was all a misunderstanding, but the Lord does not accept this so easily, and asks other leaders to bring Seira. All this while Jejichu is going to be thrown into the cell, and a young noble named Raizel appears, and at the request of the Lord will bring Seira back. That morning was a peaceful day for the students where they competed to see who made the best paper airplane. Outside, Raizel appeared at the school from the roof, and when he used his power, everyone noticed what was happening. Raizel used mind control power and all the students acted as if nothing had happened. Then he met the security guards, and jumped to attack M21 who fell to the ground. Before he could finish M21, Regis and Seira appeared. Raizel announced that he was happy to see Seira after having proposed to her. This ended up irritating Regis, but even so the boy ended up being caught by Raizel. Because of this, Seira asked him to stop, and they refused to do things the way it was being asked, and then Raizel became sad and retreated, warning Seira that she would be sad if things got worse. After all this, everyone went to the principal's house. M21 rested. Regis warned that the guy was extremely strong and that he had proposed to Seira. At that moment she had refused, and because of that Raizel ended up destroying everything. After all this, he was in confinement for years. With this we discovered that Regis is 199 years old. He's young, right? Frankenstein examined Tan and Takeo and they were fine. He took the opportunity to say that M21 was getting better, and that all this would be due to our protagonist's power. The two were embarrassed for letting M21 be attacked, and because of that they asked Frankenstein for more power and he accepted. After that, Regis was talking to Seira, warning that Raizel was a complicated guy. Seira remembered what had been said to her and thus gave Regis a caress, asking him not to worry, and after that Seira left the house. Frankenstein noticed and asked the protagonist if he could handle it, and he said he would unleash the seal imposed on Frankenstein. Seira met Raizel to talk. He explained that he was obsessed with her. However, the girl didn't care at all. But something made her very angry, the fact that he called humans dirty and foolish. Then she dumped Raizel, explaining that he was nothing to her. Because of this he got angry again and Frankenstein appeared to protect her. Raizel went after Frankenstein. Seira said that there were strange things there, and Frankenstein warned that Raizel had a soul weapon which belonged to his clan. And then Raizel invoked this weapon and delivered an absurd blow to him, cut him at the speed of sound. Frankenstein also invoked his weapon. And then my friends, they began an intense battle, and Seira was just watching. Regis appeared to help her and stop this fight now. Seira even invoked her weapon to fight Raizel, but he invoked the Lord's royal summons which forced Seira to obey him. With that she was taken to the castle, and Frankenstein took the opportunity to tell our protagonist everything that was happening. The Lord realized that this was a chance to meet Raizel, and in fact she had been waiting for it. Seira introduced herself to the Lord and she immediately got to the point. The Lord told her to tell the whole truth, but it turned out that she didn't speak. And then the Lord invaded her mind to get answers, and Raizel said everything he saw, frightened by the things that happened to Seira, and because of that Seira was left in peace. But even so, going against the Lord's words was breaking a law, and because of that Seira was sent to a cave. Frankenstein, Regis, and our protagonist went to the castle, and Frankenstein had already arranged everything, giving medicines to the three who stayed. Pill called D2. On the plane they started to have turbulence, and there in the land of the nobles there was no landing strip and the plane was going to crash. Some nobles were afraid of what was happening, and the plane crashed and the guards were called to check what was happening. Three advanced walking through the forest, until Regis realized that they were entering forbidden places. But in fact it was an area where our protagonist used to live and there was someone there. They walked without Regis as the boy stayed to protect the entrance, and upon entering and opening the gates they realized that there was a sword that was known as the end of the world. Outside the knights were tracking them. Regis noticed and decided to finish off the guards who were there. He managed to deal with several, but they outnumbered him. At that moment guess who appeared to save? Tan, Takeo, and M21, who arrived killing everyone. The three were hiding in the plane. The guys got there as stowaways. Frankenstein ended up scolding them, and Raizel explained that he was accused of killing the demon lord because that old man was killed by a traitor. People didn't care, they wanted to protect our protagonist in some way. So we go back in time where the old lord was wondering if Raizel was happy to know that he now had a family, which would be Frankenstein. And the Lord was happy to know that Raizel had changed a lot for the better. Returning to normal time, Raizel explained that he was going to the sanctuary in the Lord's castle. He needed to meet the current Lord to talk about some things. The Lord got irritated and said that she would use the eternal sleep punishment against Jejutu. But then everyone got confused and no one wanted that to happen. They said that he was too trustworthy to have that punishment. But she reminded them that he was the one who took care of her when she was a child. And in this past we discover that she envies Raizel simply because the Lord chose him instead of her to be the next Lord. In one of these memories the Lord called his own daughter. She ran towards her father but only to find out that she was talking to Raizel. When she saw that he received the invitation to be a lord she started crying. Then the Lord went to Jejutu's cell and asked if he would choose her or her if the boy appeared, and said that if he told the truth she would spare him. He explained everything that happened and the Lord thanked him. The man knelt asking for forgiveness, and told her to apply the due punishments to him, and ordered him his eternal sleep, and she sent Rajek and Carius to go after the invaders. Meanwhile M21 and Regis were going to the Lord's castle. They were being used as bait to attract everyone's attention. And then Raizel would go in with everything. Meanwhile Seira escaped from the cell and found Rosaria. She said that she came to stop Jejutu's eternal sleep, and with that the two started fighting. Returning to Regis, Raizel told them the things that happened in the castle, saying that his grandfather fell into a deep sleep. Because of that M21 appeared and decided to deal with Raizel, while Regis fled to save Seira. Some nobles ended up finding Regis running to the castle, and they decided to pursue him. M21 decided to use the usual plan, and ended up provoking Raizel. This worked and Takeo shot Raizel, which ended up causing a lightning explosion, and then Raizel awakened an immense power that ended up calling the attention of Raizel and Frankenstein. and they worried about this. One of the nobles warned Regis that he should flee, but the boy refused, and so they began to fight. Meanwhile, M21's fight was intense. He suffered a blow that made him fall to the ground. Before anything happened, Tan and Takeo appeared, but they also suffered attacks. And then Rajek appeared and said that Raizel should have already defeated everyone. And Frankenstein also appeared, and he beat up Raizel. He said that he had no time for packages, and that unlike him, he had already fought in intense battles, including with a leader. Rajek was Raizel's brother, and as a courtesy, he drew his sword. And Frankenstein also drew his weapon. Meanwhile, Regis was taking a lot of beating, and the noble simply asked him to leave, but Regis thought that was cowardly. And the Lord spoke with Rosaria, who had already defeated Seira, and at that they were summoned to the main hall. In Frankenstein's fight, Raizel ended up getting in the way, landing an attack on Frankenstein. Rajek got irritated and wounded himself so that everything would be equal. He didn't want his brother to get in the way of the fight. Regis lost the fight, but he managed to hit Carius, and he made a promise that if he was hit, he would help him. In the Lord's room, the woman said that Seira would be judged for Jejutu's eternal sleep. But Jejutu said that all this was a lie and was not something the Lord wanted. The woman got irritated and said that she would put Raizel together, even if that was impossible, and all this because of Frankenstein. Speaking of him, he delivered such a strong attack that it hit Rajek. And Frankenstein said that Raizel's father was the man who taught him to use the powers he had. Meanwhile, Jejutu explained that that woman was not ready to be Lord. He explained that the current Lord's hatred for Raizel was because of what her father did, offering Raizel a Lord position. Jejutu warned that she was tense and would not be ready for this, and the Lord said that he would go into eternal sleep anyway. Then she summoned Ragnarok and looked directly at Jejutu. With that, she prepared to give the man eternal sleep. But right at that moment, Raizel appeared. The Lord said that anyone who sympathized with Raizel would be killed, while one of them jumped on Raizel, delivering a strong attack. But Raizel was very strong, and no matter what he did, the attacks didn't work. Rosaria also tried to do something, but her blow also didn't work. Raizel hit the woman's attack and she fell to the ground. Another noble appeared using a shield around Raizel, but Raizel broke the shield. Then he used the mind control of those three who attacked him, making them kneel. The Lord advanced to fight Raizel, and the power she used was extremely strong, drawing the attention of all the nobles. While she attacked, Raizel only defended. No one could help because the Lord wanted to finish Raizel alone. Then he realized that she was not using all her power, and asked her to do so, but she didn't want to. He said that she was afraid of losing to him. With that, she got mad, and now she was using her maximum power. However, not even her strongest attack worked on him. With that, she started to tremble at the base, dropped her own sword, and was afraid of losing to Raizel, and the other nobles appeared to help her, even against her order. But Raizel said it was useless, warning that the Lord was the only one capable of scratching him. Everyone started attacking him, but nothing worked. With that, Raizel prepared a very powerful attack, and then the Lord picked up her sword again and used the same power against him, and finally she managed to scratch Raizel. And with that, he said that she was not alone, and her greatest power came from the people who were with her. He used a lot of power and ended up almost fainting. Frankenstein barely appeared to hold him. Then the Lord warned that she was prepared for what would happen, and Raizel summoned another Ragnarok. The two swords joined, thus giving birth to the previous Lord. The Lord said that he would explain things to his own daughter since he was no longer in that world. He said that he was not feeling free and that he should cause a revolution in the nobility. Because of that, he explained that he went into eternal sleep on his own, and the Lord would have ordered Jejutu to stay to understand what would happen. That was exactly why the man wanted Raizel to return to the noble kingdom to prove his innocence, and Jejutu had accepted that everything had to be that way. Because of this, he said nothing, and before they could realize it, Raizel became a traitor. In fact, he was guilty of something he had nothing to do with. The guy was totally innocent. At that, Regis appeared and was thrown in there, and said that his master's sin was of the whole clan. Therefore, if he was executed, the same should be done to him. The leader who brought him told the Lord not to do anything, since Regis was the future leader of a clan, a guy who really acted like a noble. And everyone was against killing Jejutu, Regis, and Seira. Everyone knelt to ask her not to do anything, and the Lord broke her chains. She jumped to hug the man, asking for forgiveness, because he was the only one who was by her side, even after everything that happened. The old Lord explained that the others were doing things for her that he could not do, and for the last time she wanted to say goodbye to her own father. And then the old Lord disappeared, the two swords joined, and the Lord hugged this sword as if it were her father. A long time later, Regis was talking to M21, asking if he was well. Everyone was healed, including Seira and Frankenstein. About Raizel, the Lord was talking to him, asking what her father was like, and Raizel had refused to be Lord at that time. He said that he wanted to continue being a noble and supporting the Lord, and said that her father was a very doting father, and they left to return to Japan. On the way back, Raizel said that a time would come when a noble's powers would no longer be useful in that kingdom, and so everything would be as the old Lord wanted. And as requested, Raizel asked Frankenstein that they would eat ramen on the way back. And so, did you like the video? Do you want the summary of the second season as soon as it's released? So go ahead and like and subscribe to the channel, and take the opportunity to check out more summaries here on the channel. I guarantee you'll like it. Just click on the video that's appearing on the screen.